All right, hey, what's up? Um, hey, so talking about recording. Man, thanks so much for all the comments on the last video. I mentioned something about doing a video where I might walk through some of the recording process, and man, you guys jumped all over that. Yeah, like, let's see the recording gear, and let's talk the recording rig, which really fired me up. I didn't know if there'd be an interest on that kind of thing. And I was really excited about that. I was like, man, I love that. And I even got my notes here. And I got myself a little, it's cold here today in Nashville. For recording, it's such a funny thing because for me, it can be this really intimidating thing, right? Like, how do I record guitar sounds from home and how do I make it sound good? And I think you just have to start like kind of chipping away at it. It's not something that overnight, you may not get an amazing sound the first time you record. And I will tell you that for me, it's something I actually practice. So like the same way that you might go practice a riff or practice for a gig or a date that you're playing, or, I'll come up and practice recording myself. I mean, literally, I will do. Even if it's not a project I'm working on, if it's something no one will ever hear, it's not going on a record. It's literally just, I'll walk upstairs, like my wife will be like, hey, because we're at home, I work from home if I'm not touring. And so she'll be like, hey, why don't you, get out of the house for a second, go up to your studio and, do whatever you need to do. And so a lot of times what that means for me, if I don't have something I'm working on specifically, I'll come up and I'll actually sit down and I'll open up a Pro Tools session and I'll just call it like test tones, or I don't know. Or maybe it's something I'm wanting to get. Like maybe it's an overdrive sound I have in my head that I want to hear out of my amps or guitars or something. And so I'll sit down with my computer and I'll actually just pull up a Pro Tools file and I'll just, it's like practice. I will make sure that my rig is quiet. I'll make sure I'll plug straight into the amp, make sure if I record that it's not too buzzy, like I don't have a weird power issue in my room. I'll make sure all my connections are good. I'll go through and like, okay, is there a way I can run this like a shorter cable, or I'll try a different, mic position, or maybe I have a Kemper up here. I might try that on something, or maybe I'll try, 99.999% of the time it's a microphone on a cabinet. I'm fortunate to have a place down below, I'll show you in a second, in the garage where I can mic up a guitar cabinet, and it can be loud where we live, so that's good. I know for a lot of you that's not the case, and in that case, man, you can get so many good guitar tones by just plugging straight into the rig, whether that's straight into your interface or whatever. I know Guitar Rig is good. Logic has a bunch of good stuff on it. Stuff like the Kemper and the Aux. There's a lot of good options for staying quiet if you need to. And I have to engineer myself. That's something that I have to figure it all out on my own. I don't have an engineer when I'm recording something here. Say a producer sends me a file to record on, or if I'm recording for one of our records. And when I say our, I mean one of the Chris Tomlin records. For those of you that just randomly stumble upon this, that's who I play guitar for a living, and been playing with him for a long time. So a lot of you may know that if you found yourself here, but some of you may not. And I never really introduced myself. I just started recording videos, and somehow you guys have all been very cool about it. Okay, so I will record tracks here, and I want to make sure that stuff is really solid. So I'll come up here and spend time just like running Pro Tools and making sure my sounds are good. And I might practice my crossfades in Pro Tools, or I might practice like, man, it'd be cool to like, what if I had the P90 guitar on the pan to this side, and I had my Tele pan to this side? What would that sound like as a rhythm track? And I'll sit and play those. I'll just make up a chorus pattern, like a pattern of chord changes, and I'll play the progression on both guitars doubled. And maybe we should do an episode on that. That'd be a cool episode because I use that trick a lot. We've used that a lot in the studio over the years. It's just recording the same guitar part with two different guitars, maybe two different sets of pedals or something, just to kind of get it to sound different. You want constantly in the studio kind of looking for ways to differentiate the sound so it doesn't all sound like one big thing. So yeah, I'll get up here and I'll make sure that it's not too hissy or too noisy. Real quick tip on that: if you're using a compressor pedal and you're recording yourself, a lot of times, right now I don't have a compressor on my pedal board, but I do a lot of the time. And when I've recorded myself with that, if the part I'm recording is too noisy, too hissy, especially like a quiet guitar part or swells or something, a lot of that stuff can get really, it can get really like, I don't know, like it can get really noisy, really hissy. And so what I'll do is I'll just, one cheat on that, or one thing is like, if you have a compressor pedal on and you're too noisy, maybe try turning that off or down. Drive pedals can do that sometimes, some delays. Like my Memory Man's kind of noisy, but it sounds so good that I use it anyway a lot of the time. So yeah, I'll work on that kind of stuff. Like, how can I make this really clean and quiet so that if I send it off to someone, it doesn't have a lot of noise on it. A few years back, I was recording and I sent the tracks off, and he came back with a note that said, "Hey, these sound really good. They're just noisy." And I was like, oh man. So that's something I've been working on for the last couple of years, is trying to get my stuff to be quieter. So yeah, one trick also is to turn down your monitors, studio monitors, when you're recording yourself. Like maybe just turn everything down and just see if it still sounds good. Just quick tip there, because sometimes like if you've got it really cranked, it might sound really aggressive and bright and nice, and then you turn it down and everything's dull and boring. So that's something to think about too. That's a little trick just to make sure. One note I wrote in here is that you don't have to spend a lot of money. I use a Pro Tools Duet. I guess we should get into the gear. Oh yeah, I was going to quickly tell you, one of the best things I ever did for myself, when I was like 20 years old, I bought the Pro Tools M-Box. This was like, 17, 18 years ago. I bought the Pro Tools M-Box, had a little USB cable, I plugged it into my Mac, and that was my first version of Pro Tools, and I spent hours and hours and hours, years and years, just messing with that. I would figure out how to do something in reverse. I'd figure out how to do a fade, a crossfade. I'd figure out how to copy and paste. I just played with it. And I wasn't using it for anything professionally. It was just like a creative kind of workspace, but I learned it, and you don't have to learn Pro Tools. There's a million great options out there. That's just the one I know how to use best. A little bit of experience in Logic as well. But all I'm saying is, if you want to do something great for yourself, especially if you are just starting out on guitar, I would buy any sort of interface at all to record yourself. Because man, it's going to be so valuable to have the knowledge, whether it's Pro Tools or Logic or something like that. Those are the more professional, but even like something like GarageBand would be great to learn on. And yeah, I think you can run it on an iPad. You don't have to have a big, $2,000 MacBook Pro or something. But I use a MacBook Pro, and I use and Pro Tools. And I use the Duet made by Apogee. That's my main. So it's just a little two-channel thing for my converters made by Apogee, and it's great. Sounds great. I love it. So it's a real simple setup. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Like I said, I've got 2 microphones currently on the cabinet. I use a 57, which you can get for under $100. It's industry standard. Everybody in the world uses it. You don't have to, there's plenty of channels out there that can talk about that. You don't need to hear that from me. It's the mic. And then I also use a ribbon mic. Currently that's a Fathead, just because it's a great sounding, inexpensive little ribbon mic, and I can blend those for certain parts. A lot of times you just need the 57. For everything we've done on YouTube so far on this channel, it's always just been my 57 on the cabinet. And then sometimes it's sometimes it's the iPhone mic. But yeah, it's pretty awesome that you guys would be interested in this. I'm so excited that you even would watch this. This is all kind of homegrown for me, this whole studio thing. It's very like, what tricks work for me. I'll pay attention a lot when we're on a session with like a real engineer, and I'll watch how they do it, and I'm like, okay, well, he's using a 57 on the mic, and that's kind of where he puts it, and so I kind of steal some tricks that way. Also, there's a lot of videos online about this kind of stuff. But let's look at the gear. Yeah, it's going to be a quick tour because I don't use but like 3 pieces of gear. And I think part of the reason is it's similar to the way I like pedals. Like I want a pedal that's got like 3 knobs on it, 4 knobs, you know, like something like a Tube Screamer. It's like 3 knobs. I can't really mess that up too much. For my mic pre, it's only got a couple knobs on it. For the cabinet, it's like I want to make sure that I've got a good mic with a good mic cable on a good spot on the cabinet with a good amp, you know, just like it's like a recipe. It's like you're putting this stuff in. You want to just make sure that if you want it to sound good, you just want to make sure that there's no like weak spots in the chain as you're going along. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just kind of building a little bit at a time. Like, okay, I like the way my Tele sounds like through my Matchless, through that cabinet. Okay, I like that sound. Now, if I'll put the 57 on there, I know that I can't mess that up unless you put it in like a weird spot or something. But for the most part, you put it on there, sounds good. And then I'll mic that up and I'll listen to it on Pro Tools. I'm like, okay, what would I like to hear? Would I like to hear more highs? Would I like to hear more mids? Would I like to hear more low? You know, it's just all trial and error, just experimenting. Yeah, you kind of can't go wrong with this stuff. It's just about trying it out. And I kind of keep a very practical, you know, what I would call like practical, you know, or real world guitar mentality with all this stuff. It's like, what is someone actually going to ask me for? You know, what am I actually going to record on an album? Would I put this sound or that sound? Like, what do I? Okay, so a swell or an atmosphere track or something like that. That might be something, or a doubled guitar part, or a barely clean, you know, barely dirty / clean, you know, big chord kind of thing. So I'll practice those things, all these little practical things, and I'll just like get my 3 or 4 like most practical sounds really dialed in the studio, and that way I know that I've got those to count on. So hope that helps. It's just some thoughts about that, just kind of a real practical approach to all this. There are many people with way more knowledge than me, but this is all really effective for me. It works great for me, and for the last 2 of the Tomlin records that we've recorded, one that hasn't come out yet and one that is, you know, I've been able to record some of that stuff overdubbed here at the house, so that's really cool. So I enjoy recording here. Let's just take you through a few of those things. Okay, first things first, I almost always am running into one of these 2 amps. Very simple. In here, turn this up, or in here for a Fendery kind of sound. I would say I track 95% of stuff at home through this. It's just amazing. But this old 60s blackface Princeton reverb, I get a lot of great sounds out of this when I need to. So yeah, there's what I start with. Pretty simple. And here is the simple little mic cab room downstairs in the garage. Couple mics on a cab. Got some baffling in here from Clear Sonic Baffles, and I just kind of pad it up all around. It's tricky. You don't want it to sound too sterile, but you want it to be kind of live, but you don't want a lot of reflection, so this works great. You can see this is 57 and a fat head, and this is 65 amps cab. You can see there. It's got a blue speaker on one side and a G12H on the other, I believe. Right now the blue speaker's mic'd up, but you can see it's just a simple little setup. Couple mics. You know, some miking techniques I'm working on. Getting pretty good sounds in here. Pretty happy with it. But yeah, I'm always trying to improve things. So there you go. Over here we got a few more amp heads. This is an old one that I got when I lived in Austin, Texas. They're made there in Austin. Fulton Webb, amazing amp. Little 18 watt head, sounds awesome. I'll have to do another video just demoing that thing because it's so good. I toured with it for many years. It's great. Over here we got a Buddha. This is the first head I ever owned. I was like 17, I think, and a buddy of mine suggested I get something like this, like a boutique head, so I bought it online. Had never even played one, just literally bought it online. This would have been in like, gosh, 1999 or something like that. And man, it's just been a great amp for me. It always sounds good. I got some marking settings there from, I think, a Passion conference, which is why it says P, because we were in sound check and I just marked it up real quick. And down here is my mic pre I use for everything. It's just a 2-channel Ventec 273. And you can see I got one channel labeled 57, so that must be the ribbon over there. We only got 2 channels. And, you know, my theory with this kind of stuff for EQ, you know, it's just input, output, bass, treble. And you might occasionally need some EQing stuff in here, but there's a spot in the middle where it sticks, you know, which is like, I guess, unity or kind of flat. And that's kind of how I run it. I don't do a lot of extreme EQing. I like pieces of gear like this that don't give me the option to EQ it in a way that would mess it up, because I'm not, you know, really an engineer. So at home, this gets me really great sounds, and it's really simple to use. And don't worry with the settings. These are just kind of, I'm always playing around with the settings here on input, output. But occasionally I might bump it up if I need to. I think for, you know, a tele rhythm track, occasionally I'll give it some low end or something, or I might cut some if I'm trying to get a part to stick through in the mix. I might dump some low end, but for the most part, I mean, 99% of the time it's just set just like that. So yeah, that's the mic pre's, couple heads. All right, pretty simple here. After the mics, I'm hitting this Apogee Duet. After the Ventec. So the mics go into the Ventec. The Ventec comes here, and from here into my computer. It's very simple, little 2-channel Apogee Duet. Great converters. Man, this thing has been amazing for me. Very easy to use. All right, so there's a quick little look at all the recording gear. It's a pretty simple, kind of humble setup, but it gets great results. And like always, you want to be listening with your ears and not with your eyes. So if it sounds good, it is good. You know, try not to get too caught up in the gear side of it. Maybe really spend time with what you have. Try to get the most with what you've got. You know, I've used the same mic pre's for 15 years and haven't had a need to improve on them. So yeah, you can get a lot of great sounds with what you've got. So yeah, just there's a quick little tour. Thanks again so much for commenting below and for staying involved. I saw several of you had said, "Hey, I'm still with you. I'm still watching." So I appreciate that. I do, honestly. I really appreciate when you guys write that kind of stuff, because I'm like, okay, cool. Like, this is working and people are into this, and you never know. I'm just on one side of the camera here, but I love when we get to connect, and I love answering questions when I can, or just getting to know you guys on there. So please, by all means, let's stay connected, and we'll keep walking through a lot of this stuff together. I got plenty of other ideas, and like I said before, anytime you guys give me ideas down below, I'll try to hit those videos as well as we film. So yeah, this has been really fun. I love the studio stuff. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if I answered everyone's questions about that kind of stuff, but if you have more questions, let me know below, and we'll go from there. All right, thanks for watching.